Hi, I'm Bryan.
And I'm Serene.
And this is episode 1 of the AnalogueTrash Artist-on-Artist podcast.
Hi, Kat.
Hi, Jean. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Not too bad.
So here we are, getting to know each other,
Exactly.
artist on artist. I've had to listen to quite a lot of your music over the course of the last week, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been quite an emotional ride at times, but I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about your background, like when you started making music and what it was that really turned you on to all of this.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, thank you for saying that it was an emotional journey, because that is like 100% what I'm going for. I definitely want to take people along with me on the road that I've been on. I started making music way back when I was like 19, 20 years old. But back then I was like a folk singer, and I played an acoustic guitar, and I wanted to be like, at that time, Jewel or Sarah McLachlan or something like that. And then at some point life kind of happened, and I took a 20-year hiatus. I went off and lived my life and did other things. And right before the pandemic started, so it would have been February of 2020, I started thinking, I need to get back into this. I need to bring music back into my life, that it was this huge thing that was missing. I'd gone through this journey of like anxiety and some trauma in my family situation and that kind of stuff. And I think it just kind of brought it all back, that it was becoming necessary for me to start writing again. So then March hit, and we all know what happened there. And I basically leaned in at that point, and a friend helped me set up a home recording studio, and I taught myself how to produce music, which had always been kind of the step that was missing. I think one of the reasons I gave it up originally was that with just a guitar, I wasn't reaching the sound that I wanted to reach. I had all of these, vocal harmonies and drum patterns and bass lines and stuff in my head, and no way to get them out of there. And I think I found that really frustrating. So when I started learning how to produce music, suddenly I had this whole box of, sounds and instruments and just this whole world of things that I could bring in. And that was really exciting. And then, of course, with the pandemic, I had so much time to be able to lean into that. So that became my biggest focus. And then at the end of 2020, I lost the full-time job that I'd had for like 8 years. And I just kind of made the decision that like this was a sign, and I was going to lean into music and make this what I'd always known was that it was my life's work, but to really believe in that and push forward with it.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a journey to have gone on and to have stopped for so long. During that time, did you find that it was missing?
God, absolutely.
Did you keep going there?
Yeah, I think it was a huge part of why I was feeling anxious. A huge part of my writing has always been emotional processing. It's sort of a long story, but like the basis of it is that because of childhood trauma, I don't do well with hard emotions. So writing music and writing lyrics became my only way of really getting it out. It was the only way that I was going to take these really big feelings that I had and put them somewhere that they weren't doing me harm. So when I wasn't doing that, it was just like damaging. It was tearing me apart, and I became so anxious, and I was having panic attacks, and it was brutal.
Right. So it was a part of you that was really, really missing for a long time.
Yeah. So that's kind of my story. But Jean, what's your story? How did you get into this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've been making music a very long time. I grew up in a tiny village. At that time, there was always a guitar around and, singing at school and stuff like that. But then we moved to London. I ended up learning opera and going to a Saturday school, Sylvia Young, and all this kind of weird stuff, auditions and things like that. School was really musical. And then it kind of just took over my life. The first time I went into a studio proper was probably around 1998, something like that.
Okay.
And that was with John Truelove. I went through my 10 favourite records when I was about 20, like the same age you were talking about.
Yeah.
From those 10 favourite records, I met the guy who did You Got the Love, and I met the guy who did Passion, and went and met Junior Boyzone and Lisa Horan from Hard Hands, and all these people were very encouraging. But they were like, you don't have any music. And I was like, no, but I'm brilliant. And so that started my whole journey on that thing, really. And I went into the studio with John Truelove, and that was all reel to reel. So that shows how old I am.
Right.
And learned how to drop in and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have to cut tape. And then over the course of the next few years, it was really interesting journey because it went from 2-inch tape to 8-track digital, then to soundscape, which was amazing because then you could do guitars and electronic sound, which, you know, around that time was really exciting. And we had this guy, Dave, the drummer, and he was working with the Prodigy.
Wow.
In the same place. So they would leave as we went in.
Amazing.
It was, you know, I was very young and I didn't really realize what was going on, but that was how it started. Lots and lots of dance music.
Right. I can hear that influence in your work for sure.
Yeah, but it was when it broke, you see. Up until then, I was listening to things like Sub Pop and, you know, French Front Federation, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when I heard like Papua New Guinea, I think that was it.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is going nowhere. This is. So from there on, I decided to write songs on dance records, as it were.
Right.
That was the beginning, besides bel canto and violin and all that crap. Did you do music school? Did you do all that studying of scales and...
Sort of, yeah. I'm really interested in the fact that you said opera because, like, I'm not an opera singer, but I did have a stint working for Acadian Opera House, and opera has always been kind of like a second love of mine. Just the passion and the drama and the excitement of opera. Like, I'm obsessed with it. My kind of traditional music history is like I took piano as a kid and I took a couple of guitar lessons, and I've been in voice lessons on and off most of my life. I have a lot of choral background, so I've been in a lot of choirs, and I think a lot of my kind of backing vocal sensibility comes from choral harmonies, you know, in those stacked layers. Like, I'm really into that. I like those moments when voices come together and like all the hairs in the back of your neck stand up. Like, I'm obsessed with that.
Mm-hmm. My daughter sings in choirs and her father's family are all chorists and all of the rest of it. And there is something to be said for it. I did Baroque violin, which I think is really similar, actually, because of the way that they pack it in on layers, don't they?
Yeah.
And I found that that was something certainly that hit me about dance music back in the beginning, as it were, was just how classical a lot of it sounded.
Yeah.
You know, the whole trance scene and all of that back then was actually very classically based.
Yeah.
And classical music wasn't really that cool back in the 90s and the late 80s. It really wasn't my thing.
No.
So I didn't want to continue. I don't know about you with the classical thing, but there was just too much exciting music out there at the time. Whereas now it's become quite a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely had a resurgence. And I think the love of traditional instrumentation and like the warmth that comes from classical instruments, you just can't really recreate that. And like I play with electronic cellos all the time, but like a real cello just sounds different. It just feels different, right?
It does.
I think we've come so far in the electronic spectrum that there's an interest in the tradition again, because it just offers something that electronic sounds are still kind of struggling to recreate.
I have this argument at home all the time, actually, about when they say the 80s were the best, but it was like, no, there was a whole new palette that arrived. It wasn't just a synclavier.
Yeah.
There was a whole new sound palette that arrived then.
Yeah.
And so you can't say it was better or worse because it was a whole new
it's just different
spectrum that you could add to music. So it's quite an exciting time. But I think the resurgence of everything with Spotify, isn't there? There's a resurgence of every kind of music.
Well, because there's every kind of music available all the time, 24/7, right?
I know.
There's millions of songs uploaded every single day. So there's like a renaissance of creators, but it also makes it hard to find the things that you really love.
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking actually what you were saying about orchestration and the inclusion of live instrumentation. And I noticed that on Billie Eilish's new album, she has orchestration proper. She's got real strings now.
Right.
She's made it.
Yeah.
She's done it.
See, that's the dream, right? Like for me, that is the dream, is to play with a full symphony or a full orchestra, right? I would love that.
It's a big thing. You then need to compose for it, don't you? Yeah. I mean, I remember like just basic composing for an orchestra, and it was so much to take into account.
Absolutely.
But it's beautiful when you play a part of an orchestra or you play within a choir because you're one of many, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that transition to being the front person, was your folk singing the first step with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd always been part of an ensemble. And like, as you say, that's a very different experience. When you're part of a choir, your goal is to blend in and be one of many. Whereas when you're soloing, the whole goal is to stand out, right? It's to, bring all the stuff you have and throw it out there. When I started kind of performing as a folk singer, and actually even now, like as an electronic artist, my goal is still the same, and it's to get across the emotion. It's to the lyrics are so personal and are so intense at times. And there's so much behind them that I feel like if my audience feels any of that, then I've done my job. If they don't get an emotional response from what I'm singing or what I'm saying, then I haven't done what I'm supposed to be doing,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you definitely do that.
Thank you.
Also, I mean, I was reading through some of the stuff that you've said, and we've touched upon one of these things, which is that, the expectations as an artist now. Music is there all the time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you look, everywhere you go, that the guy saying, that it doesn't cost anything to make music at all.
Oh, gosh,
and it's like, this whole thing, the guy at Spotify playing 0.3 pence per play. And the same person, you only get paid on the first play, then, the same person can play it over and over, and you don't. It's a bit of a minefield. And I don't know about you, but this whole content creation and online presence, I mean, it's a joy to meet you and to do this, don't get me wrong. However, it's like how many times you're allowed to mention things and where you should put it and how you put it and how. And it does take away an awful lot of that mystique, doesn't it? I'm just wondering how you feel about it, the need to create content and the expectations of the audience, considering they expect it all immediately, all the time anyway.
I find it exhausting, to be honest. I think it was fun at first, but then it kind of became like, how many different platforms am I going to be on? When do I post on these platforms? What do I post on these platforms? Trying to come up with a short form video, because everybody needs to have a short form video, but you also need long form video, and you need to be authentic, but don't overshare, but, tell your story, but tell the curated version of it, but it should sound real. There's just this it's a lot, and you never really know if you're doing it right.
Yeah, it's really contrary, isn't it?
Yeah. So you just kind of do it because you feel like you should be doing it.
And then how authentic is that?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, how much of my story do I tell? How real do I be? There is like a curated version of myself online. I try to express all sides of myself, but sometimes I feel like that just doesn't land. And then you end up feeling, I don't know, like an idiot, because you're like,
or exposed, or vulnerable, because there are those things that you share, hoping that everyone is going to be open-minded and kind or whatever, and actually you find that people are at their worst online.
They can be, for sure.
Some people are just like, oh wow, I don't actually ever have to look at that person. So saving some for yourself is always a good idea.
I agree. And I've tried to walk that line between being open and honest about my experience and about my history while still protecting my own sanity, because a lot of what I've sung about still hurts in some ways. And I've made my peace with a lot of it. But I don't know what I would do if someone decided to judge me based on that experience or call me out for a decision that I made they didn't agree with.
There's a difference though, isn't there? There's your personal life, which is your personal life. And then there's one's art, which is sometimes cathartic. I'd say a lot of the time art is cathartic. Absolutely. Because it takes quite an emotion to make something and let it go. It's like a little boat, and it's like and if it doesn't sail, and you're stuck with it. I certainly have worked through an awful lot of stuff through my music over the years. And then I hit the point where I'm like, I'm not going to write another sad song. I'm done with sad songs. And I didn't write a sad song for years. I think it was like 3 years. I refused to write any sad songs. I've made up for it lately.
Right. It comes back, right? You can't avoid it forever.
Like so yeah, totally.
But I get that not wanting to write about sad stuff anymore. Because I think I get to a point too where I'm just like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, this is a thing that happened. This was in my history, in my past. Let's move on.
Yeah, I had a similar thing, where I was very ill for a while, and it was something that was out there that people knew about. But eventually you just, actually enough's enough.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there's certain songs that I have difficulty singing live because of what they mean to me.
Absolutely.
And what they represent.
Yeah.
And do you ever decide you're not going to sing that song live anymore?
It is something that I have thought about a lot, because there is one particular song on my album, Music for the End of the World, called The Stand. And I included it on the album because I thought it was so important, and I like it production wise and all of that. But it is about cutting a family member out of my life. You know, it was written at a moment where I was deciding that I can no longer be in contact with this person, and I have to block them, eliminate them, never see them ever again.
That's really hard.
It's brutal. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. It was also, I think, the best decision, because she was incredibly toxic. She was a narcissistic abuser. So it was essential to my progress as a person, but it is still something that I feel guilt over. I have a hard time listening to the song. I have a hard time singing the lyrics, because one of them is like, it has to be over. And every time I sing that lyric, I can feel like the need that I had in that moment to end it, for it to be done. I don't trust myself to get through without crying.
Yeah, I have a song I don't like singing live anymore for that exact reason. It's just that little bit too far. That was the whole thing, the content thing, you know, what people expectations, how much of you do they own now? Yeah. How much do you give away? What do you share, what you don't share? It's the interesting thing, because if you don't share anything, it doesn't mean anything anyway.
Yeah.
The kids are really smart these days, whatever style of music it is. It does come down to reality and authenticity and the rest of it now.
I think the younger generations, I sound like an old person when I say that, but like, you know, Gen Zs or whatever, they see through bullshit really quickly. You know, they know if you're lying, right? And being like an elder millennial, the advent of social media was all about curation, right? It was about creating this perfect world, and the whole like Instagram influencer thing came up like in the early 2000s, and it was about, you know, trips and your best looking photos and your handsome boyfriend, and like it was all of that kind of curated stuff of this perfect life. So that was what I grew up in as content creation, was this curated thing of only your best angles, only your best moments. You know, your dinner had to be picture perfect, right? Like that was what we were doing. So this new generation that is all about reality and taking away all that artifice and just living in the moment and being dumb online and that kind of thing. It's a whole different way of thinking, and I kind of love it, but it's hard for me to get past the I have to curate kind of feelings.
You gotta take this seriously.
Yeah, it's like I need to take this seriously. I need to be the best version of myself. But they're like, don't be the best version of yourself. Be a dumbass, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how to do that.
Well, I don't know how to do any of it. So, you know, you're in the right company here. Don't worry about it. Right. Well, I had listened through to your songs, and the first track I chose is Lonely Road.
Interesting.
Because it's a proper little heartbreaker, really. It's very deep. And it really touched me. And I thought, wow,
thank you.
You've got a great voice. And I was wondering how long it took you to record that. Because sometimes these things come really quickly and sometimes these things don't. And it struck me as something that took a lot longer than its 4 minutes. You know what I mean? It seemed to have quite a few levels on it.
Yeah, that's so interesting you picked that song, because it's one that's kind of overlooked a fair bit. And it's a bit different than other stuff on the album. It actually came together really quickly. I had kind of the initial melody line of it, and then I just kind of added some extra vocals to it. And then at the end, I just ad-libbed, and I probably did that for a couple of hours of different things, and then went back and picked the stuff that I thought worked the best, and then mixed it down. So it came together probably within a few hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really impressed, because there's something very magical about that track. There really is.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
It's one of my favorites. I love that you love that one.
There's something in the air tonight, a feeling in my heart that isn't sitting right. As I walk with you down the lonely
was also noticing, like, with your music, it's very minimal considering where you could go with it. Do you find yourself like stripping it back and stripping it back?
I love that you say that because I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day, and he mentioned as well that he thought that I was doing something kind of minimal and stripped back or whatever. And I'm thinking I have like 20 different tracks in my production, and I have like 18 layers of vocals and all of this stuff. I do have a love for the wall of sound kind of thing. I like big and epic. I like lots of stuff going on. But I do find that that gets really convoluted, and then I start losing elements that I've put in, you know, and when I'm trying to have a sharper ear and eliminate stuff that just isn't coming through, you know, and it's like, I love this particular thing, but you can't hear it in the mix. Like, it's not doing anything. So off it goes.
Yeah. So you do, and then you do that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, in the silences in the music, I think nowadays, you know, you'll get a waveform through, say, of a remix or a mastered track or whatever, and it'll just be a flat line right at the top. You know, and you've lost all the contours and all the light and shade and all the rest of it, haven't you? You know, that's something that...
Yeah, the contrast.
Thank you, the contrast. Yeah, and it's, I think it's very easy to create the perfect piece of music now.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, it isn't, but it is.
Right.
It's much, much easier than it used to be.
Right.
But keeping it simple, not simple, it's not the right word, but uncomplicated would be a better way of putting it.
Right.
Like, I was listening to Blurry, and that track has some really, really complicated rhythms going on in it. But I could almost hear what you had taken out in a way.
Interesting.
To keep it so pure.
Right.
So I wondered whether you do that, whether you build it and then shave it off and bring it back to its essence, or whether you just keep it simple all along, keep it as empty as you can.
I think there's moments that need to be empty. You know, I've always known that like my voice is my greatest kind of gift musically. So there's moments where I want that to really ring true. And that's also part of the lyric thing of like, I really want you to hear this. Like, these words are important. I need you to hear these words. And that's when I'll strip things back almost to nothing. And the levels thing was definitely something that's always in my head of, if I want the epic parts to sound more epic, then there needs to be a quiet moment before it. There needs to be a pulling back and then a releasing, and there needs to be kind of a dance that comes with that, right? So I always have that kind of in the back of my head. The song that I picked of yours is Magic.
Oh.
Yeah. I was listening to your stuff yesterday, and a lot of it I was just publicly vibing and making an ass out of myself on the public streets because I was dancing so much.
Oh.
But Magic I really liked because I think similar reason, it had really interesting lyrics. I thought there was something a bit more deep to it than some of the other stuff that I'd heard previously. And I also really liked where you have, I think I'd call it an interlude or a bridge, but there's some really interesting synth chords that come in that are a bit unexpected, that did that little like ear treat thing. So that's why I picked that one.
Oh, okay. There's a bit of a story with that one, in that I heard this song on a car advert and I was like, that's amazing, that's amazing. And I used Facebook, I was like, what is this song? What is this song? And eventually I found out what the song was, and I bought the song and I downloaded the song and I wrote the song on the song.
Okay.
And it turned out to be Shack 54, Andrew Weatherall, you know, Two Lone Swordsmen.
Okay.
And eventually I had the great joy of meeting him because Mr. C ran this club night and I'd done a track with him. And this guy, Andrew Weatherall, was DJing at his party.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, can you get me in? Because I really want to, I've bootlegged this song. And so the night came and I had to wait for hours and hours and hours. And eventually to go back behind the bar and then up this little steps to where he was DJing. And I was introduced as like one of the best vocalists, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's quite nice, you know, Mr. Weatherall. And I said, look, I've sung on your song. I told him which one and everything like that. And he was like, wow, no one's ever given me my music before. And I was like, wow. And then I checked and it was a song arrangement and everything else like that. Anyway, didn't hear anything from him. He went off touring in Australia. And then the label got back in touch with me saying he loved it and to let me know when it was finished. And I was like, well, I'm going to need the stems. And, you know, asking him for his most famous track, the stems of.
Yeah.
I never got the stems. And then he died, which was really, really sad. You know, it's your typical story, really, you know, and I loved his work. I loved his DJ and he's amazing. Yeah. But yeah, he passed away. And so I played it. I was like, look, I've done this song. I don't know if we should be saying any of this. I think we did give them percentages on the track. But
should I have not picked this one?
Yeah, so the song was already there and I gave it to Lloyd. And then he did his best to recreate something underneath, which is different. Right. But if you play Shack 54 underneath, it works perfectly.
Right. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, it was all due to hearing it on a car ad.
That's so funny. I love that. One of the things I really liked listening to your music was that you always have these moments of something unexpected. Like you'll just be kind of grooving along and then there's like synth progression or a change in rhythm or something that's come up that's just like, oh, that's interesting. And it kind of reawakens your ears.
It doesn't want to be boring, does it? And also keeping it natural, the way it feels. You can over quantize things. People are tuning things all the time. They're doubling the vocals. I mean, on the last single, I actually had to say, look, I just want it to be a single vocal with
Right.
a little bit of reverb.
I love the new single. It sounds great.
And I think there are these things that you can do to your music that might make them more owned in a commercial sense, but then you begin to lose your identity.
Yeah.
So I think probably, you know, we both have our ways of keeping our spirit in the music.
Yeah.
And making it our own rather than just something that could be anyone, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point too, of there is a lot of pressure to sound like somebody else these days. Like everybody wants to know, who do you sound like? And I struggle with that because I don't want to sound like anybody. I want to sound like me. I want to do my own thing. I have influences that I draw from, but I don't want anyone to say, oh, you sound like Billie Eilish. Oh, you sound like this person, right? Because I think if you create your own moment, your own sound, your own thing, that I think is the key to success, but not yet, but any day now.
Well, one thing about the successes in life as well is when you're in it, you don't realize, you know, it's always behind you when you realize what's going on. The things that have gone down and I've not even realized what's going down until I was like, oh yeah, that was going down then, you know, you just don't realize when you're in it.
So true. We should talk about the second song of yours that I picked, which was Collapse in Slow Motion.
And that's a song I didn't write. Yeah, this is a...
That's so funny.
No, it's a song I loved to DJ.
Yeah.
Came out by a band called Velvet Condom. Quite big here in Berlin. One half Alice Gift, one half Sobast Penenza. Both really talented. And yeah, that track was just one of those timeless tracks that you could just drop whenever.
Yeah.
And I just felt it never really had that reach. And I wanted to sing it. So I asked them if they'd mind, and they said not at all. And so after argy-bargying with the person I was writing with at the time, insisting that it was a great idea, and it was a great idea.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really great track. It's a wonderful song.
It really is.
Yeah, and what's exciting is that Alice Gift are going to be coming to London with me. So we're going to be doing a show together in the Strong Room in October.
Awesome.
Yeah. Could have knocked me down with a feather on Saturday when he said, yeah. I was like, okay, that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Collapse in Slow Motion is like a Berlin electro anthem from the noughties.
Yeah. It definitely has that vibe. It reminded me of like Depeche Mode or Cure. It had those kinds of vibes to it, which, you know, throwback, but also timeless.
But that was what was happening in the noughties, you know, the whole fashion music thing. It was really interesting. I think that Collapse in Slow Motion definitely is the epitome of that particular era.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad they liked it.
Yeah.
I still haven't found out what it's about.
play, dream all day. Unraveled and decay, collapse all day. The whole is just a play, dream all day. Unraveled and decay, collapse all day.
I was thinking like my granddad was a big horror guy, and I can kind of hear this goth horror, folk horror thing, and your sound kind of leans towards it. Have you thought? I mean, do you listen to film scores?
Definitely.
Is it something that you draw from?
I would love to have something placed in film because I think there is definitely an aesthetic to my sound that would work really well for film. I've had a hard time convincing anybody else of this, but I believe it to be true. Yeah, I think movie music makes all the difference. I have a couple of friends who are film composers, and you can really shift what a scene looks like and what it feels like based on the music that's part of it. You know, you can make it sound a whole lot spookier or a whole lot lighter, depending on what the soundtrack is, right?
Yeah, or you can play the absolute opposite, like in The Clockwork Orange.
Right.
With the Singing in the Rain, or there's a few
Yeah.
of those, you know, Barber's Adagio for strings when they're running, killing each other.
Absolutely.
It's just, yeah, I can hear your stuff in this sort of folk horror thing. I can imagine it appearing on those types of films. It's,
you know,
quite haunting.
put it out to the universe.
Okay, my second song, it was a toss-up between Deep Dive and Graves, and I went for Graves.
Interesting. The collab.
Because there's an accessibility to it.
Mhm.
It really is, God, how do I put it? Commercial is not the right word, but it has a Moorishness to
Right.
it. So each time I listen to it, it sounds different to the time I listened to it before.
That's so interesting.
And it seems to be a bit of an onion of a track.
Right.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed listening to it very much. Whereas the other one was much more ambient, the Deep Dive. This one is much more of a song, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
got like much more of a solid arrangement. Who is Mike Kelly?
So Mike Kelly is a very talented person that I met through TikTok.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And at some point he had put out that he had written this song and he was looking for a vocalist to sing it and just kind of put it out into TikTok to like do your thing with. I did something with it. He was like, I love this. We ended up connecting offline and recording it and mastering it and releasing it. And it was a really fun project because it's not a style I normally work in, but it kind of leaned into those dirty Southern kind of swamp rock kind of vibes, which I absolutely adore. So it was a lot of fun to work on.
But that's good fun, that kind of collaboration. I mean, do you
Yeah.
want to do more of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, I loved that project because he had the lyrics and he had the, you know, kind of guitar and drums and bass part, band part, but he didn't have necessarily a melody for the lyric. So I created the melody for the lyric and I created some background vocals. I think I added some piano to that as well. I can't remember. But vocally, it's a challenging song. It's kind of the chorus is very beltery, and I love belting partially because when I first started getting back into singing, I told my vocal instructor that I wasn't a belter. You know, I was always like a kind of soft, sultry, jazzy singer type, and she was like, "That is bullshit. We're gonna get you belting." I love her. Shout out to Red James.
Funny.
She's amazing. But she got me belting, and now I can't stop.
Well, I think it's beautiful. I think it's a really, really beautiful track.
Pleasant smile, a small white lie at safe distance, easy to hide from their glare, so steady. Turn and run, building walls around a grave.
It's so funny, like without talking to each other, that we managed to pick songs that we didn't write.
Yeah,
that's so
but
funny.
I think what's interesting about it is there's a message in there somewhere. You know, it's like
yeah.
What I've learned lately, and I've always known really, is the vocalist that sings on the top of it is the thing that most people stare at.
Yeah.
Whether you're craft work, or unless you're Vion, rather than you're staring at AD as well. But in general, if you're fronting something and you're writing the words and you're writing the melodies, if you do it right, you give it what it needs.
Yeah, it becomes yours. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, like, you've had such a long history in the industry. Like, is there projects that you worked on that were your favorite? Was there, you know, collabs or anything that stuck out over the years that were just your favorites?
Oh God, I mean, it's all a journey, isn't it? Yes, there have been projects that have meant the world to me that have never seen the light of day.
Of course.
And there are projects that I sang on for 2 hours that ended up being quite well-known anthems.
Right.
You know, it's really bizarre. Like, finding my own sound has been the most rewarding thing as a singer.
Absolutely.
But finding my own voice has taken a really, really long time, I think. And I was like quite bullshit, really, especially during those dark electro times. They were great fun.
Right.
It was a lot of fun to be had.
Yeah.
I'm a bit old for that now. I find myself like, I mean, I love to dance and I love to make that music. Like, when I hear like some really good grime or something like that, you know, and I'm like, I can really appreciate it. Whether I'd be able to sing on it, yeah, I could probably sing on it, but performing it at 4 a.m, you know, there's a whole thing that goes there as well. Right. Yeah, generally music tends to, in my experience, like be the best stuff and the worst stuff.
Right.
So yeah, I've had brilliant collaborative times with some amazing artists.
Absolutely.
The thing though that I've taken from all of it is being able to write on my own.
Right.
Yeah, and not needing one person in particular to be able to do what I need to do.
Right.
I'm not a music producer. You know, I always end up with a song that needs to be put into production, which is something I'm kind of starting to change. But I have trusted people, but I don't know how to answer that question, do I? It's sort of like, I mean, you get so passionate about these things and everyone has a different expectation and you work so hard and a lot of stuff goes wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it doesn't work out the way you expect it to.
Yep.
But then you get up and you perform and you know, it goes down right and it's what you're supposed to do. You make music because it's a passion thing and you have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's not always an easy thing to do.
No.
I don't think.
No, I find it difficult to keep going sometimes. Right. I think if you get too stuck into the numbers or what other people think of what you're doing or reviews or whatever it is, it can make it difficult to want to keep going because you feel like, why am I doing this? You know, I don't have any streams. I don't have any, you know, major deals. No one's paying attention. Why am I doing this? Right. And I think you have to take all of that out of it and just keep doing your thing, you know, because it's part of you. You need to do it. So just let it be that that's what it is. Right.
Exactly. I mean, the one thing we both have that we're really lucky with is that we've got people that help us get it out there. You know, that's really valuable. I saw a really interesting thing online that someone was saying, you know, why is it not the artist sort of like promoting and like crying out for everything? Why is it always the management or the label behind them? And I found myself sort of jumping to the defense of management and labels, which I was surprised by. But as an artist, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, it's really hard for us to blow our own trumpets the whole time and say, oh yeah, I'm fucking ace.
Yeah.
You know, I'm brilliant, because it's all objective anyway, isn't it? So without those people sort of pushing it and helping you to push it, I don't know about you, I'd find it a lot more difficult to find the impetus and to find interesting angles on things, because I don't think I'm that interested. And most artists are doing it because, you know, like they are working through stuff. And so expecting the artist to also be able to feel good brilliant about themselves even. And then on the other hand, to expose all their vulnerabilities and all their bad experiences is crazy, right?
I know. It's a lot to expect, right? Like, we're supposed to be these sensitive, beating heart kind of people, but we're also supposed to be like marketing executives and, you know, PR reps and this kinds of stuff. And you're supposed to talk about yourself in a positive way, but if you sound, you know, too kind of bolstering, then they think you're arrogant. And especially as women, I think we deal with that to a different degree than a lot of our, you know, male friends do, because there's a whole idea of that, like, women should be more humble and grateful.
Yeah, especially in electronic music.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to proper geeky stuff, you know, when it's analog synths are involved.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, there's a girl here. What's she doing here? You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of like, whose girlfriend is she?
There can be that. Yeah. It's got better, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
But I think still, it is still the guys make all the decisions.
It's definitely a boys' town. And I think the farther up the food chain you get, the more kind of men in power there are, which is, I mean, that's a patriarchal system that we live in just generally. I have been really lucky at my level that most of the people that I've come in contact with have been really supportive and haven't kind of played into the whole gendered thing. And I'm really grateful for that. And there's also been some incredible, you know, women and non-binary people that have supported me and helped me on the journey. And I really like to lift them up when I can, because I think women supporting women is so important. You know, we have to kind of sing each other's praises a little bit louder, I think, just to get more voices in the room. But at the same time, like, there's people that I really trust their opinion and I am appreciative of their input and their support. But there's also a lot of, you know, random dudes on the internet who like to give me unsolicited advice about all the things I'm doing wrong.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. That's nice.
Yeah, it's great.
That's really nice.
Love it.
Mansplaining and all that.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. You know, and I'm always open to constructive feedback and constructive criticism, and I try to take it that way. But at the same time, there's certain moments where I've wondered, like, would you be saying this to another guy? Or is this simply...
Yeah.
Right?
But that's okay, because eventually it gets to that point where you need the voice. I mean, I think that was it with electronic music when dance music came out in a big way. I used to go to the radio stations and MC and sing, you know, over DJs live. You know, this was unheard of.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you know.
Yeah.
And that was so nice, because I realized that with all this electronic sound, it is quite dehumanizing. It's and adding a voice will always bring it back to your heart, because it's got a human sound.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why it works, because it's grounding.
I agree.
But it is still quite sexist.
Yeah. You know, when it comes to electronic music, I always think about Björk in the 90s. And she was always a big advocate of electronic music did have soul, because there was a whole debate. And I remember being a kid and falling on the, like, if there's no guitars, it's not real music kind of line. But Björk always said that, you know, the laptop or whatever you're using is just a tool. And that if there's no soul in the music, it's because you haven't put it in there.
That's true.
And I've always loved that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she's so smart.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's like all of this stuff around me, like it's just tools, the same way a guitar would be a tool. You know, a synth is a tool, an interface is a tool.
And the sugar cubes were fucking awesome.
Exactly.
I remember that when I heard that bass line, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
That's really something else.
Absolutely.
So were there any other female artists that you thought, yeah, you've really helped me along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this before, but Garbage has always been a huge influence for me, just because Shirley Manson is certified badass. She's incredible, and she's been very outspoken about things that are very important to her, and also about the difficulties she faced as the front woman of a hugely successful band. You know, there was a lot of credit given to the band as being the creative geniuses behind it, and her just being like the sexy front woman. And she's been very outspoken about, like, I'm writing just as much as they are. I am inputting just as much as they are. I'm producing as much as they are. You know, this is not just about, you know, eye candy standing at the front of the stage, right? And I have always really respected that, because she wasn't, you know, screaming about girl power or whatever those other movements were in the, you know, early 2000s or late 90s. She was just saying, like, just like, give me the respect that I deserve. You know, I'm doing the work. Just give me the respect that I deserve. And I've always tried to live by that I don't want to be necessarily a female artist or a female producer. Like, I'm just an artist. I'm a producer. I'm doing the same things that all the men are doing. You know, I just happen to be a girl.
Yeah.
It shouldn't make any difference, right?
It shouldn't, but somehow the patriarchy.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the country I live in. I mean, it's still very strong in the laws.
Yeah.
And I look at what's going on in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't see the women having more and more rights in certain places.
Yeah.
And I don't see us as people all joining together anytime soon, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I've got this like 14, 15-year-old daughter, and I'm like, wow, it's a different world that you're giving. Yeah. So really, it's an old, boring thing, the patriarchy, really when you think about it, when you've got like the end of the world coming up. It's like
bigger concerns.
Can we go
I know the whole world is burning, but let's worry about gender roles, right? Yeah.
You don't, I mean, you're in Canada, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
You were born there?
Yep.
Yeah, you came over and did all those shows, didn't you? How was that?
I did.
Did it rain?
I loved it. Of course, absolutely. I'd be disappointed if it didn't. No, I really loved being in Britain. I've thought a lot about making it my permanent home, or at least for some amount of time. I've always wanted to live in Britain. I've had an obsession with Britain since I was young, which is weird. So it's kind of funny that I ended up signed to a British label. It just seems kind of like kismet. But that experience was so great because I got to spend an entire month just completely, you know, immersed in my dreams and in my goals. And I met some incredible people and had some crazy experiences. And even the bad experiences were great. You know, I was really devastated to have to come home because it meant, one, that I had to leave a bunch of people that I've learned to love behind, you know, and I still keep in touch with a lot of people, but they're like 3,000 miles away, right? So
it's a long way.
It's a long way, and it kind of sucks. And nobody ever comes this far, you know. I would love for them to visit me, but it's difficult to keep in touch that way.
I mean, I live away from my home country, which is England, and I still get terribly, terribly homesick.
Yeah,
I do. I mean, it's great here in Germany. It's great here in Berlin. I mean, there's always something going on. But I just miss the Brits and their humour.
That's the thing, is I found, I mean, it may have been because I was in Northern England and maybe it's different than Southern England. I don't really know. But everybody was so welcoming and so kind. And every room that I played was just like supportive and excited to be there and really well received. I never felt uncomfortable. I never felt unwanted. You know, it was just a really lovely experience. It made me want to live there even more because I was like, you're all so nice.
Well, that's super affirming, isn't it?
You know, there is a good music scene in Vancouver, but it's not very electronic focused at this point. There's not a huge kind of infrastructure to support it. There's more like indie bands, or jazz is really big out here. So that makes it a little bit difficult to, you know, find shows and to keep kind of moving forward here. Whereas I know in England and also like Germany, there is a huge electronic following and it's much more accepted. It's much more loved. Most of the people that follow me are from, you know, Europe somewhere.
Right.
So there's definitely more support for what I do. And that's kind of a major reason that I would like to live somewhere else other than Canada.
Well, that was how I ended up here in Germany, was they just kept booking me and paying me well and giving me nice hotels and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's nice. That's much nicer than what they're doing.
Well, let's do that.
So what have you been up to lately? What have you been releasing? What have you been chucking at the world?
Whatever I can. No, my most recent release was the live EP. And that was just kind of a love letter to the tour that happened last fall, September, October in the UK, which is kind of a moment in time and has some of my favorite songs from that live set. There was stuff from the EP that I released that fall, which is called Luna, and also my album Music for the End of the World. So there's live versions of that. Those are also releases. And I'm currently working on some new stuff, kind of inspired by some of the people that I've met and some of the stuff that I've played, going a little bit higher energy, I think, which is kind of fun. But yeah, I'm hoping to have some new stuff out this fall. Also been playing locally. I played a show at the Fox Cabaret here last April. And I have another show coming up in September, yet to be announced, but it is booked. So that's going to happen. And then something else in the works for November. So I'm hoping to have at least a few shows here in Vancouver this fall.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Because that does happen, you know, just because there's not an actual scene going on at a time, it can mean one of two things. It can mean, oh, right, nobody likes it, but it could also mean everybody really wants something like that and somebody needs to do it, which, I mean, that's happened in London so many times.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to do it anyways, whether they want me to or not. I'm just going to show up. So
do it.
Exactly.
They won't know what's hit them.
Exactly.
What was it? 88% of life is turning up.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good.
My mum gave me a badge that said that.
That's
I think
amazing.
It was when I wasn't going to school.
Different intended purpose, but still resonates.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Yeah, totally.
But you have some new stuff out. What are you working on?
Yeah, I mean, I just released a single with Matt from Tipsy Eyes. That was Stay.
Just killer. I love it.
Yeah, ended up really quite a strong song.
Yeah.
And just a single vocal, which I never usually do, you know. So I was quite pleased with it, and it's big. And he'd done a couple of great remixes in the past, and everyone else got super busy. So it's actually worked out really well.
Nice.
And been working on new tracks. I've got a few new things going on up my sleeve on right now. But, you know, when you feel pregnant, I feel like I'm musically pregnant.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there are times where you are performing or you're working on images or you're just taking in everything that's going on. And then there are those times where you're like, oh, I've got to get it out. I'm like that. I've got to get it out. I've got to lay an egg. Yeah, so I'm quite excited about feeling like that because I don't get like, you know, it comes in fits and spurts for me.
Yeah.
And then there are those times where it's just whoosh.
Yeah.
And so that's quite exciting when you feel like that.
I love that metaphor. It's very funny.
Lay that egg.
Yeah, just lay that music egg, right?
Nice to meet you.
You too. This has been so much fun.
Absolutely. Rock on.
You also lay that egg.
Lay that.
I've been Kat Bryan.
And I've been Serene.
And you've been listening to the Artist on Artist podcast with Analog Trash.